everybody, it's Lynn Pratt. I wanted to show you this fun little watercolor journal that I made. You can open it up. It's made with one full sheet of 22 by 30 watercolor paper. I made it so that every page can open and be completely flat, whether you're in the beginning or the end of the book. And then there's a couple extra ribbons, so if you want to save a page, you can put a ribbon up through. Open everything up nice and flat. Close it up. You can decorate your cover with whatever you'd like, and then just tie it closed when you're done. I used my dual edge ripper to trim my paper. However, you can easily use a straight edge or X-Acto knife. I just wanted that deckled edge. First, you're going to trim your papers all horizontally, and then you will cut them down vertically to the correct page size. You can download the chart with all of the dimensions in my Patreon online school. If you want a deckled edge on every side, make sure you cut off a tiny scrap on the end of your long strips as well. You will end with 15 pages to use, plus a bunch of extra scrap. Once you have all your pages cut, you're going to fold them in half and use a bone folder or some other device to really have a nice crease on each page. Do this to each one of the 15 pages. Once that is done, you are going to put one page inside another and inside another. So you're going to have groupings of 3 pages together, all inside of each other. You're going to do this to all the pages, and in the end, you should have 5 groupings of 3 pages. Use the dimensions I provided to mark those folded edges with pencil. Make sure you go straight up the sides so that when you poke your holes, they are all aligned. Open up each bundle of 3 pages, making sure not to move them around so that you're poking through straight on the crease of each page. Make sure you keep realigning them each time you poke the hole through. I am just using a standard tack to poke the hole through, but you can use a pin or whatever else is easiest for you. I have an eraser under them so I don't go through my table, but you can use a piece of foam or anything you need. I am using clear stretch cord on a standard needle. I'm just using a small piece of masking tape to tape the end of that down to the edge of my paper so that I don't pull it through by accident. I'm then going to take my needle and start from the hole on the end and go from the outside into the center of the book, going through all 3 pages. Then I'm going to pull it all the way through and come back through from the inside, heading out through the next hole. I'm going to go up to the next hole and go from the outside in and then to the inside out, making sure each time I go through the next hole, the string is tight to that hole and I don't have any slack in the line. Now that I am finished sewing through the first set of pages and my string is pulled nice and tight, I'm going to grab my second set of 3 pages and start at the opposite end, going from outside in and then inside out, doing the same thing I did on those first pages and just going right down the line and sewing through. Make sure each time you go through the next hole, your string is just pulled all the way through and isn't stuck on the corners of any of the pages. I am using a plastic type cord on this one, but you can use whatever type of heavy string that you have. You can use regular thread from a sewing machine or slightly thicker thread works a little bit better. Once you are all the way through down the line your second set of pages, you are just going to tie the end of this string to the initial end of that first string that you taped down so that you didn't pull it through. So just peel your tape off and take that end and tie a few knots to get those two ends together. If you're not sure about tying knots, you can easily look up a book binding tutorial that shows you exactly what type of knot you should do. But I just did 3 standard knots, one after another, to secure the end. Now that your second book is secure, you're going to pick up your third pack of 3 sheets and start again going down the line from the outside in and then the inside out in the same order that you did that first book, securing it to the other 2 sets of books. Once you get all the way down at the end of this line, you're going to loop through the end of those laces on the second book and tie a knot right at the end. Sorry it went off screen here a tiny bit, but you're just going to loop through that end stitch from the last book and just tie a couple knots right there so the ends are secure before you lace on your next set of pages. Do the same thing with all 5 books of 3. You should have everything bound together and going straight down the line so that all of the pages are together. You can see I have a little cross in the middle of mine, but you don't need that at all. Now, I used some of my scrap paper and used binder clips to hold my book together nice and straight and tight so that I could glue the spine. If you don't have binder clips, you can sandwich it between some heavy books and a table and just stick that end spine over the edge so you can apply glue to it. I used just standard Elmer's glue and applied it to the end spine of my book. Now, if you have book binding glue or something else, you're free to use whatever you want. You want to apply enough glue that it's going to stick to the ends, but not so much that it squeezes through all of the pages. I used a scrap piece of paper just to wipe it and keep it smooth, and then I sandwiched it between some books and let that first layer of glue dry completely. While the glue on the binding of my book was drying, I got my cover ready. I used mat board and cut it in 4.5-inch squares for the cover ends and covered it in washi tape, making sure to go over the edges and wrap around to the other side of the cover. The center spine was a 3.25-inch by 4.5-inch piece, but make sure that you measure the thickness of your book and make yours the right thickness. Leaving a little bit of space between the cover and the center binding, I used cloth tape to wrap around the edges going from the outside in and then also covering on the inside of that binding. You're welcome to use whatever type of flexible tape you have to do this. I cut the strings for my page markers and the long string to tie my book and taped those down as well with the same tape. I'm going to put a cover on the inside of the book using just regular cardstock that covers up that tape. These inside cardstock covers measure 4.25 inches square. Now I have my book cover completely done and taped up and ready to go. I'm going to add another layer of glue to the spine of my book and use just a small scrap piece of computer printer paper that's cut down to the length of my book pages. I'm going to smooth that glue again using my scrap and then just put this small piece of computer paper over to just really help seal those edges together. I have it cut to the length of my pages, and then once everything dries, I will just trim off the edges as needed. Now I'm going to sandwich the final pages in between some heavy books. I'm going to make sure to put wax paper or plastic over and under just to make sure that that glue doesn't seep out and ruin my books. Now I'm going to cut 2 cardstock pieces that are 4 1/4 by 8 1/2 and score them at 2 inches in from each side, leaving 4 1/2 inches in the center. I am going to glue them to the insides of my cover. This is how my pages are going to slip into my book, but be able to stay flexible and move around while I'm opening and closing the book. Make sure that you do not glue the loop of paper down, just those ends, because you want the pages to be able to slide into the insides. I cut the first and last pages of my book to about 2 inches in length to make them easier to slide into my cover opening. I just bent my cover back a little bit and slid them into that loop that I created in the cardstock. I want them to stay nice and loose so that they slide in and out, so that when I open and close my book, it always lays flat. If I glue the binding in, it would not do this and be able to move. Now you can see your little journal is complete. All of your pages are in, and when you close your book, all you have to do is tie the ends. The extra little ribbons you can use to mark pages that you're working on or favorite pages. You definitely don't need these to make the journal, but they make it a little more fun. Then just tie your end pieces into a knot or bow to hold your journal together. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed making this journal. Let's paint.